welcome back to week 3 of the Whaley podcast about Jordan Peterson's book, Beyond Order. So chapter 3, I was not that keen about when I read the chapter, because I think it's pretty self-explanatory what he's going to be talking about, which is do not hide unwanted things in the fog. Now, when I wrote this down, I made a Freudian slip I've just noticed. It says, do not hide wanted things in the fog, or frog. So, yeah. So anyway, I get to introduce that topic. The bridge between the first 2 chapters and this one, I guess, is that you're heading purposefully towards something, stumbling towards it. One of the things that could derail you or inhibit your progress is to keep things that are going to be in the fog that will bite you, explode, or just generally make you less single-minded about going for those things. I guess that's what this chapter is in context. So, Seamus, what is fog? What do you reckon fog is?
Dad, you can see that by trade you are a teacher.
That boy in the back. What is fog?
I think this chapter was really interesting because, I'll answer the question. Fog is all the stuff that you don't want to look at, and it all gets murky. We were talking last week about the dragon and confronting the dragon, and fog is the stuff that you have allowed to build up in your life, and you don't want to confront it, and so you've left it because there's hundreds of reasons why you don't want to confront something, but it's built up, and you don't actually want to know the truth, because the truth is painful.
Yeah.
Requires sacrifice. It requires something of you, and so you take the easy road out and you allow the fog to settle, so that actually deep down you know that there's something, but you actually don't know. You don't want to know the fullness of it. I think Jordan Peterson talks about how what's the CEOs, they get away with it. The accountant is cooking the book, and he says the CEO is, what's the word, the legal term?
He hasn't got plausible deniability.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And so he knows the accountant's cooking the books, but he never looks into it. And so he can just go, oh, I didn't know that was happening. And I think we all do that I think we all do to some extent, do that in our lives, where we know that the accountant's cooking the books, but we don't want to scratch the surface too deep.
Well, this is why we're doing the podcast, because Mum, for us, we all want to confront you.
We wish.
It was your turn last week, Sean.
Can I have a book?
No friends. Yeah. So does everyone agree with that definition, or do you have another one or something to add to? So Bonnie, it was about defining what fog is.
I've got something I'd like to add. I think from what I was reading is that sometimes fog is just ignoring what you do know, but you don't want to make an issue. And so you leave it undealt with, because there's probably something bigger that you're trying to just, what's the word? You excuse those things. Like Jordan Peterson was saying, when you lean one way, another part of you leans another way. And so sometimes you lean this way, leaning towards the fog, but another part of you is leaning another way. In other words, you're trying to achieve this thing, so you ignore this thing and you don't deal with it and you don't confront it.
Could we give some context just for his opening story? Jay, could you recite the opening story about
word for word?
Word for word, verbatim.
Music.
Give me a second. So there were 2 stories at the opening. Are we talking about the married couple?
Yes.
Little plate.
Okay.
We were both married.
So, as I understand it, a patient comes to him and is having anxiety and also a myriad of issues. And at the beginning, he thinks it's because she's changing jobs. But the more therapy they do together, he finds out that her relationship is really the core issue. And what's happening in her relationship is that she has no say-so. The husband has done all the interior decorating. Am I telling the wrong story?
No, it's good.
Okay. So he has the say-so of the interior decorating, what they do, how their house is, and she never confronts him on any of those issues.
Mm.
And basically, in the non-confronting him, this anxiety and all these bad things build up in her life because she didn't take on the fight. She didn't stake what was hers. She didn't compromise. She didn't address the issue, and they end up getting divorced in the end. And yeah, after 30 years. So it ends in death either way. So the takeaway from that is have the fight. He tells another story about his father-in-law and mother-in-law. And how long is it for? 15 years, 20 years?
40 years.
He comes home and has a soup and a sandwich, and she always serves it on these little plates. And after 40 years or something, he throws the plate across the room and says, "Damn these small plates." So he'd been hating this fact of life, but hadn't addressed it for that amount of time, which is so idiosyncratic and very small and stupid. But that amount of time has built up this resentment in him, and he's just holding on to all of that instead of sorting out a small plate to a big plate. So yeah, really interesting how those tiny things, Peterson says, whatever you do every day is years amounts of time, right? Like those hours and hours and hours of this stupid little argument. So why not address it at the beginning, reach some sort of compromise? Those are the stories you're talking about, right?
Yeah, Jordan Peterson says that life is what repeats. So you better get what repeats right, because it will just keep on repeating and then create either good patterns or devastating patterns in the future. So yeah. So those damn plates become a big issue 40 years down the line.
What struck me about that is that it's, as Jaden said, it's such a tiny little thing, and you think it's insignificant, but Einstein said the most powerful force in the universe is compound interest. It's that compounding effect time after time. And compounding effect doesn't make much difference initially, but as you iterate over and over and over, it makes a huge difference. And so I've even felt in my personal life, there's something small and I'll just leave it. No, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. How many times has the family heard me say, it's not worth it? But then every day, every week, it just compounds, and then you explode. And you look like an idiot. You look like you have the problem. Why are you throwing plates around? Well, it's because it's compounded over time.
So I have a personal story I'd like to share. We were newlyweds, and I was working just up the road from an Indian lady who was teaching me how to make real, genuine Indian curry. And I was fascinated at this. Do you remember this? And so for the first 3 months of our marriage, I made a curry every single day. Every day.
Yeah.
And nobody was saying to me, okay, let's have something else now. I fancy steak and eggs. Could we do? Nobody said anything at all. And I was on this rampage of making curries, and it was fish curry and chicken curry and this kind of curry and that. And it was so exciting. I was learning. I was newly married. I was new. And after the 3rd month, my sweet husband came home, and he was riding a motorbike at that time. And he said to me, "What's for dinner?" And I said to him, "It's curry." Now, bear in mind, I had never heard anything about not wanting curry. And that particular night, he threw his helmet on the ground and stormed inside and slammed the door. And I thought, what's the matter? I had no clue. Do you remember that? And I went in, and he was lying on the bed sulking. And I said to him, what's wrong? And I've got my bowl of curry. What's wrong? And he said, I hate curry. I don't want to ever eat curry. And he had this full-on tantrum. And I had no idea, not a clue that was even an issue for him. Do you remember?
Yeah, in retrospect, it would have been easier if I'd said earlier, I like curry, but not every night.
Yeah.
I thought maybe you might get sick of it.
Yeah.
It's one of the things I think happens when you notice that you react really badly, so that you explode or you suddenly sad, but you're not sure why. I think it's quite a good indicator of something that's building up, that's repeating, and okay, I can handle that. But suddenly one time you snap, or you just give up hope or something like that. It's quite a good indicator that there is some fog there that you need to dispel. Anyone ever had that experience?
Just you.
Just me.
I think the trap of it is the insignificance of it, the perceived insignificance of it. And there's almost something in I don't know if it's in our training or in society, or I don't know what it is, but there's something about, don't be petty. Don't sweat the small things. Don't worry about that. Don't bring that, he's always complaining, that sort of angle, that it seems immature. It seems like you haven't matured in your feelings to bring that sort of stuff up or vocalize it or be irritated or frustrated. And what Peterson's trying to demonstrate is it's actual emotional maturity to bring that stuff up. It's actually wisdom to I think he said somewhere near the end of the chapter, ask, knock, invite, and you might actually get a good answer. You might actually get a good result. So that really, I mean, I can see some instances in my life where that has helped me. That really challenged me again because I was listening to it today.
I personally struggle to just say it how it is. I don't know why, but then I do the very thing you're talking about, hold on to it. It builds up, and then I have a big freak out and feel like an idiot. But I'm holding on to these frustrations, and like even in our marriage, like there'll be little things and I just don't say anything. But inside I'm like, that's like that thing on the floor, or like clean up after yourself because I'm going to have to do it. And
This is news.
no. And then I find myself so frustrated, and then I just don't say anything, and I feel like I don't have, for lack of better words, the balls to man up. And I don't know if that's insecurity or what, but I'm trying to learn to just get over myself and just say it how it is. But I find that a real struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Peterson's story about the couple with the paintings, he brought up a good point about that, is that the woman had so backed off of her life that she didn't even know what she wanted. I mean, a sign of emotional maturity is actually also knowing yourself well enough to know what you want, and then being able to express it in a way that isn't abusive, but that's clear.
Yeah.
So there's kind of levels to that. I know I at times definitely have not known actually what I want. I'll be frustrated, but I won't know because that hasn't been developed, or I haven't thought about it, or and then you'll like lash out at the other person. It's like, well, what do you want? So I don't know. I'm just frustrated. So there's, I don't know, just hearing you speak, Bonnie, there's probably levels to that.
Yeah. I think even in things that I know I do want, I think as I'm thinking about it now, I think I have this like, we used to have this mindset of, I don't want to be rejected. So I feel like if I say something that could potentially cause a blow up or something, then I'm going to be rejected, and I don't want to go through that emotion because I find that really, it's just too much for me. So then I'd rather just suck it up and not deal with it. But I know it's not helping me because then I'm just living in frustration. So I've had to like deal with that rejection complex and get to the point where it's like, it doesn't matter what the reaction is. I gotta communicate because it's gonna be better for everyone.
Yeah.
But it's not easy. Really not easy.
So if you know things that are in the fog, like you, Bonnie and Esther are saying, you just maybe don't want to cause a ruckus right there about it. Is there other reasons why we might know some things in the fog, but we just don't want to tackle it? Is there other reasons other than I don't want the damn fight, as Peterson says, have the damn fight? Is there other reasons rather than just I don't want a damn fight?
You might hate fighting. I know growing up, fighting was not seen as a good, positive thing. It was seen as a negative thing. So like I naturally shy away from having a big fight because I'm afraid that means our relationship is broken.
Not anymore.
Well,
Are there other things though?
I think
Yeah.
some fights aren't worthwhile.
Yeah.
Like we said at the beginning, sometimes I think what Nikki was trying to say is sometimes you have an aim of where you're going. And this issue isn't something you have to deal with on a daily basis. It's not part of your life, and it's completely redundant as to where you want to go.
Yes.
Another type of person that needs to engage in all the confrontation they can find. And I would say that is equally destructive because you're never going towards your aim. So I think the fights that matter are the ones that you have to deal with daily. But there are a lot of fights that you could start if you wanted to, and they're completely redundant as to where you want to go. The reason we have fights like the ones that these guys are talking about is because we're bringing that person with us to our goal.
Yeah,
Very good. Yeah.
Yeah, very
we don't
good.
need to bring with us.
very good. I think sometimes as well, there's this whole concept of, I've heard Sean often saying this, that I'm in this particular fight right now, and often with himself or something, he'll be saying, I'm in this particular fight right now. I can't pay attention to that and that. I know it's there, but I'm going to leave that in the fog for the moment because I'm at this fight right now, within ourselves, with our partners, that kind of thing. So sometimes there are those reasons. But like Bonnie was saying, living in the frustration, that line that really spoke to me was, if you lean too much this way, something in you is leaning the other way. So that frustration and the anger all comes up because you're trying to just excuse, and give on that side. It's not healthy. It's not healthy.
Kind of makes you double-minded in a way. And I know in the book of James, in the book of James, it talks about a double-minded man being unstable in all his ways.
Yeah.
Talking about faith with doubt, that you kind of go backwards and forwards, but it kind of applies in this instance. Of Peterson in this chapter is saying that you believe this thing, but you'll act differently, even though you believe that, because of fog issues. I think he's saying that.
Yeah, it says here in this corruption of the form we are discussing is, in my opinion, integrally linked to deception, to lying, more bluntly, and more important, to self-deception. Yeah?
Yeah. So to answer my own question, are there other reasons? So we've got two. Basically, we don't want the fight right now, or the fight's actually redundant for the purposes that we're stumbling towards single-mindedly. That would just distract us. But something that I've struggled with but have fully overcome is the just fear of messing up again, just of failing. I tried that once, it didn't go well. I tried it again, didn't go well. I know it's important, but I'm just going to leave it kind of in the haze. I'm just going to not try again because I'm tired of failing. I'm not particularly fond of failing, to be honest. I like to succeed. Anyone else feel that?
No.
You quite like failing.
I don't know. And I don't like failing. I don't mind failing. But I think that's because you were always so intelligent. I'm being honest. I think very intelligent people don't like to fail because they're not used to it.
Yeah, me and you.
Whereas I think that it didn't worry me to fail because I wasn't so super bright.
I think it's a gender thing too. I think men want to win. It's just in their nature to, be in front and be doing well, and people.
I know women that are. Like
Yeah,
that.
there are some women, but I'm talking in very general terms. Women are more nurturing by and large. And so
Rufus.
failure is not an attack against their identity. For many men, a failure is a judge on who you are. Probably talking through my nose. Anyone agree?
No, every ideal is a judge, in Peterson's words from chapter 1, I think.
Yeah.
Chapter 3.
That's absolutely
Chapter
true.
3. Yeah.
Oh, was it in chapter 3? Yeah, every ideal is a judge. So every time you fail, it's because you're not good enough. It's like sin, missing the target is that the definition of sin. But if you don't confront that, and if you leave that in the fog, you're just not going anywhere. Like, rather aim again, try again, fail again, aim again, try again, fail again. Sean, Seamus and I have started doing jiu-jitsu, and Esther and Bonds have started as well. And that is just an exercise in failing time and time and time again, with almost no light at the end of the tunnel, because it's constant, and the people you're working with are getting better too. And it's every time you go there, you're in a position where someone can kill you if they want to, and you have to tap out every time we do it. It's like that. So what is that but taking a shot, failing and getting better, stumbling towards that goal?
Yeah. Again, in my mind, I know that's absolutely true, because if you don't take aim and have a shot of it, you're sure not to hit the target. I think Peterson makes that point. But you might hit the target if you do have a shot.
Yeah. That's what Michael Jordan used to say. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
It's true. Yeah.
It says the sins of men, when you don't hit the target, the sins of men speed their deterioration. I thought that was quite interesting.
Does that mean you need practice?
Sorry?
Is that meaning you need more practice? Because you'll hit the mark, you're more likely to hit the mark?
It's all to do with when there's no direction, you just drift. And that probability that you will obtain what you need and want by drifting aimlessly is very low. You're not going to hit that mark. You're going to fail. Things fall apart of their own accord, obviously, but the sins of men speed their deterioration. That is wisdom from the ages. And that's the thing, is I see with lots of people when they don't make decisions, when they don't try, when they don't put themselves out there, they end up drifting, and then they just become really small-minded, and they become really closed and shut off.
I think I like this because it ties back to previous chapter, saying think about who you can be, and like that you set yourself some target first, and then you can go towards it, have necessary fight to head towards that direction. But if you don't have that aim or goal, then you're drifting anywhere. So you pretty much in the fog as well. Nihilist.
Yeah, Peterson makes the distinction between sin or missing the target as either being one of commission. You choose to do the wrong thing and go the wrong direction. If we're talking about heading, single-mindedly towards an aim, we choose not to do that. That's commission. Or the omission, where we just don't go, we just don't choose to go that direction. And you talked about plausible deniability. I think that was in that context where you choose not to look at it. You don't choose to actually do something wrong. You just choose not to do something right. And both are going to miss the target.
Do you think there's ever a case where it's better to hold off, not make a decision, not confront something, let something play out, rather than addressing everything that potentially could be a fog issue? because I think we all agree that you have to address some things, but only in the last 5 or 10 years have I realized sometimes it's better to leave and I'm talking about purposeful. I'm not talking about avoidance of responsibility or issues or not wanting to deal things. I think sometimes there's a strategic holding off and trying to deal with things, because sometimes things resolve, or you need another piece of the puzzle in order to resolve the thing properly. And so at least from my perspective, and I'm open to being wrong, it's not always, I don't think it's always the right thing to just, oh, that's part of my target. I've got to aim, I've got to do this, and I've got to confront this issue. And she said that thing and he did that. Sometimes you've got to let things percolate a little bit or swirl around or come back to it. And I know that you could use that as an excuse to not deal with things. But I think sometimes the fog can help you. And I'm not talking about personal fog, I'm talking about situational fogs. Sometimes you need things to be unexposed for the reality of those unexposed things to play out, and then you can deal with it.
Sean, we've seen you do that quite a lot, and it's been the right decision.
Sometimes.
Um,
But I'm not talking personally. I think fog is defined as something you're avoiding on purpose. You're blocking your view, and you have the right, the responsibility, and the ability to look at it, but you choose not to. The fog is not something, I think, that's an external situation that's exposed, that's imposed on you. The fog is a personal. I'm not going to look at this right now.
It's a choice, isn't it? It is a choice.
Yeah.
So maybe I answered my own question saying that I'm wrong.
No, I don't think you are wrong. I think there are. There's loads of things that you have to. Sometimes you even know things, but you have to stand back and let it play out, because they're in the fog and you need them to acknowledge it or see it or whatever. Yeah.
I think from a spiritual perspective, sometimes you've got to allow time for God to prepare the ground, sort people out. Again, the downside of that is you can always use it as an excuse. God hasn't done it, so I'm not going to. So you have to be really careful about that. And you have to be really discerning about things. You just need a bit more time. But yeah, we have to be really careful about that. And like you say, Sean, when it's a personal issue, the sooner you sort it out, the better. Yeah.
Yeah, I just think we had a situation in South Africa where we knew something wasn't right with a couple, and they were really close to us actually, and then they came and they left the church. And we knew that was going to happen. God had warned us.
Something negative.
And sorry?
Something negative.
Yeah. And then they left the church, and we thought, weird, and they went to another church. But we knew something was up. We couldn't put our fingers on it, but we just watched. We maintained relationship and everything. And then all hell broke loose, and it all came out. And it was actually helpful to us, but not to them. But we were able to go in and still love them and care for them and bring them through. Yeah, and that was fog. That was fog. So yeah, so I think sometimes it's wise. It's wise to leave things in the fog sometimes. In my opinion. Not that I do that much.
But as we're talking about it, I'm thinking maybe that's not what Peterson's talking about. He's not talking about general situations. He's talking about a personal direction in life. Because you find it as setting a goal for yourself. And if you define it, then you've also defined the conditions for failure.
Yeah.
And so if you don't define it, you can't fail. So I should have recalibrated my question before I asked it.
No, it's good though, because it will spill into other situations. And I think this chapter to me was like a couple counseling in many ways. How to deal with the relationship that you're having every day. And don't leave the small things. Yeah. It's, what's the Bible say about the small things?
Am I in hell now?
Yeah, something about small things breaking big things. I've forgotten the scripture now. Wasn't it small foxes spoil the broth or something?
The broth. The vine.
Spoil the vine.
Yeah, that's it. So, and that's like we said at the beginning, a daily repetitive irritation that builds to resentment and bitterness and explosions, or maybe sadness. Because he also mentioned it can be explosive, but it could be just hopelessness. You feel hopeless or sad.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at knowing why I feel the emotions I feel sometimes. I think I've got better by asking myself, why do I feel like that? But sometimes I have to dig back. I've no idea why I feel like that. I have to dig backwards and find, when did I start feeling like that? Why am I so sad about this thing now or angry about this thing now? And I think Jaden said this week something about if you sit on the end of your bed and ask the question, you'll get the answer. If you think about it. That's pretty good advice.
That is Peterson's advice.
Yeah.
He said exactly that. If you sit at the end of the bed and you ask yourself why you're feeling a certain way or what you want, if you really sit there and ask that question, you'll actually get an answer. And I don't know if you guys have tried it, but it genuinely works, quite bizarrely. So it's hard to say where those answers are coming from, but they're there if you ask the question.
I just prefer to blame Esther for all my
Dennis, the reality is we all blame Esther for all of us.
Thanks, Es.
But for our first few years of marriage, when we didn't have kids, I was always I was the one who didn't bring up any issues. I think we had one argument about finance in our first year of marriage, just one. And I said, you're talking out of your, and I said like ass. And that was, oh, I can't believe you said that. And that's all I said for the first year. And I realized when we had kids, I started taking things seriously. And I started looking into the fog because I thought, it's okay for me to not have any ideals, but it's not okay for the kids to come and, these white canvases that we're going to be nurturing. It's not okay for them to have this. And so all of my values and all of the stuff that I actually believed came to
Suddenly
the
emerged.
and Esther's like, what the hell? Why didn't you say this before? And so we had our biggest fights and our biggest clearing of fog when the boys arrived. And I guess my advice is deal with stuff before you have kids, because
It's good.
it's good to confront these things. Don't think it'll be okay. It'll be okay. Don't push it off for another day. And then we've got really good at it. And we're very good at fighting. I'm proud of
You are actually, you fight really well.
Just get through the issues. Wait for your joke, Sean. We get through the issues, and then it's not a personal thing because we realize we're both fighting to communicate. We're both fighting for the same thing. And although I might be vehemently, saying something, she might be just as strong, we trust each other, and we built that connection. And I think all the way through this chapter, Jordan Peterson is referencing marriage, because it seems to be that's the one relationship that you've chosen, right? Kids, you don't get to choose, but you choose, and it's just as easy to choose to be out of it as it is to be in it. So it's like you have to clear the fog for this stuff.
And it's actually quite rare to meet, especially older couples. It's actually quite rare to meet like ones that have done this well for a lifetime, because often you meet older couples and you can think, why are they so immature? Why are they nickering at each other about things that seem really small? And it's really easy to judge as a younger couple. Be like, oh, look at us. We've got it all sorted out. But the truth is, if you haven't dealt with all of the things on the daily, that's where you end up. It's really easy to judge it from the beginning standpoint. But the truth is, you got to work hard at daily, all those repetitive cultivating the daily repetitions that happen all the time. And yeah, I mean, I think one thing I'm learning, because I still get really offended when he confronts stuff. I just be like, oh, how dare he? Don't you see how hard I'm working? Don't you see what I'm doing? How dare you confront this stupid small thing that you want? And I'm really trying to learn to like just shut up and just process it for a bit and actually hear what he's saying instead of just getting offended, even though I still do get offended, but I'm learning slowly.
We're recording this, right? This is gonna be on.
But yeah, just try to like hold on to it and process it for a bit, because I sometimes take some time and then come back to him and be like, okay, I realize what you're saying and you don't just hate me. And because I don't think in my life I practice that much. And like Dad said, like figuring out what you feel and why you feel it. Another thing I didn't grow up doing. Nobody really coached me on that or went like, if I got mad, it was like, okay, just close the door, let her deal with her stuff. And I wouldn't even understand what was going on. And then everyone would back off. And it was just a terrible way to go into your life, because you have no concept of how to manage and sift through and sort out what you want, how you feel. And so I'm having to do that in marriage. So of course I get really offended, because that's a kind of a new practice for me. But yeah, it's a good practice.
Went so well.
The things that
Hold on 1 second. Seamus, if you were going to do it again, would you go into marriage confronting issues?
Absolutely. I would do it from day one.
And do you think you would still be married if you did that?
Yes.
Totally.
Yes. Because
It would have been easier though.
yeah, I think we definitely would. And I think we would have probably avoided a lot more of our issues if we had dealt it at the beginning. My fear, and I think it's similar to Bonnie, was the fear of rejection. I thought if I caused too many problems and petty problems, I would come across like, yeah. And so I was the nice guy.
Yeah.
And looking back, it's so weak and so pathetic, because you're not fighting for anything. You're just trying to placate, and you're not confronting anything. And when I did, Esther was teachable, and she was able to, have a conversation.
But I said to you the other day, that was really actually cruel that you didn't do that earlier on. It's actually really unkind not to say what you think early on, because then it goes years down the line when there's actually way more pressure in the relationship, i.e. children. And then suddenly you're confronting them on all this stuff. And it's like, well, part of you's like, how dare you? Why didn't you say anything before? And now I'm like sleep deprived and I've got a baby, and now you're going to confront everything? Like, stuff you. Part of you just gets bitter and mad. You get over it, but it's much harder.
I don't think you've got over it yet, Esther.
I'm working on it.
Sorry, Mom, I interrupted you.
No, I was just going to say to Esther, when she was saying she gets offended, just to say this out loud, is that how does being offended help one? How does it help us?
I didn't say it's helpful. It happens.
No, I'm not saying you. I'm talking for everybody that's listening. How does being offended help one? How does it make you grow? How does it make you advance or become better? Being offended is just such a it's a deadlock.
Yeah,
from
closes
anything.
the doors. Isn't it?
Yeah, from anything.
But that's the purpose of it, Mom. The purpose of being offended is to put the wall up. It's not like that's the fruit of it by accident. That's the whole purpose. How dare you say that? Wall up. Okay, I don't have to deal with it anymore.
Yeah. But is that not going back into the fog? That's
Yeah.
So being offended is actually putting fog up, and it breaks relationship, because then people feel like they've got to tiptoe around on eggshells around you. They can't confront you. They can't really have a genuine relationship with you because you get offended. So what's the point? So what you end up doing is you just don't want to have a relationship with that person.
Let me ask this question behind everybody on the back of what you're saying. And don't think about anyone else. Just think about yourself. Do not think about anybody else.
I'm already thinking about someone else.
Careful.
Do you ever do that exact thing where you get offended on purpose, by choice, and put the wall up?
Mom is so mature.
Mom's in denial.
I'm trying to think. I have to think through these things. No. If I act offended, it's because I really am offended.
So we all.
I don't do it on purpose.
That is a choice.
If I act offended.
It's because I really, I'm not choosing it. I am a.
Maybe it is a choice. Yeah, maybe it is a choice then. Okay. But yeah, if I'm offended, it's because I'm offended or I'm angry or whatever. I'm hurt or.
Like everyone else?
Like everyone.
Yeah. But Sean's asked, do we on purpose, do we put the wall up so we don't have to deal with it? I don't do that.
You're very good at dealing with stuff.
No, but I mean, you do that with me.
Oh, yeah.
When Dad says, what? I can actually even know the sentence I can say for him to get up and walk out.
Yeah.
You said, don't
It's-
think about anyone else. This is reflection. This is on your
For you.
I don't believe I do. So maybe I've got some fog there.
Rejection.
If Mum gets offended, it's for a moment.
I know when I'm playing games, and sometimes it's not just a simple choice. It's not like, okay, I'm going to turn this on now. Sometimes it's a reaction, but I'm flowing with it. I'm going with it. And then afterwards, I have this dirty, oh, that doesn't feel right. I don't like that. Even if I got the result I wanted, I resent the result. And I think at some point in the process, we know what we're doing. And I don't think any of us don't do it. Because we're all in our fallen nature, in the way that we were born into this planet, we all have elements that are broken.
I think that's baseline. That I would say that's something I've actively been trying to work on for the last few months because it's so akin to dishonesty. And one of my fundamental things is working on honesty. So if I'm offended by someone doing something, as much as I can, and if they're an important relationship, I try and bring that to the forefront as quick as possible.
How?
To say, well, it happened with you about a month ago, and I sent you a message that was to the effect of "screw you," so that you knew I wasn't happy with the interaction we'd had. And I thought about not doing it because it would be a lot easier to not do it. But I didn't want to just relegate that to the fog and have it ruin the next day and have a resentment build up over time. I wanted to deal with it in that moment. So I literally just left. As soon as we got in the door, I messaged you, "Hey, screw you, guy. Why'd you do that?" And then we couldn't resolve it that night, but immediately the next day, we hit that on the head and came to a resolution where there wasn't an offense that got in the way. It was just a highlighting of that issue that we completely dealt with.
Yeah, and my immediate response to your "screw you" message was, "How dare you?" And I started to get offended, and then I was tired. So when I'm tired, I react really quickly. So I try and put a bottle on that. And the next day, as I thought about it and processed it, I realized I was out of line for what I did. And so I came to you, and my opening line was, "I don't want to make excuses. I'm sorry. It was my bad."
Yeah. Which is the best opening to an argument.
It's very rare. But as I thought about it, I started to get offended and think, well, how dare you? How dare you say, because you don't know what my situation is and what I'm, and we actually talked about my situation, but I had to take responsibility for my actions. And
what's funny is our offense was essentially the same thing. But I've been trying so hard.
Yes.
Why are you unhappy with it?
Yeah.
And we weren't seeing, I think in that moment, we weren't seeing each other's position, but we had the exact same offense, which is, how do you not value me?
Good point.
And we both had good intentions prior to that. We were both working hard prior to that. And we still had this issue where we weren't seeing each other.
I think that's something I really, to connect it back to the book, he was talking about perceptions, and he was talking about, I'm going to paraphrase, but you do not have objective truth. You are not the final word on what the reality is. And sometimes it could be a culmination of events, and then the fact that the boss is treating you badly, or the fact that your grandmother taught bullied your grandfather or whatever. And so how do you know what's true?
Yeah.
You do not have objective truth.
Such a good point to remember.
So then he even gave some pointers on how do you resolve these sort of things. And you don't say, you are betraying me. You say, I feel undervalued. I feel this. I feel like you're betraying me, because at least it leaves the door open to the other person saying, but I'm not betraying you. I love you. Or I've been trying this. Can't you see that? And it's much more resolvable than this final, that's it. I don't want anything to do with you anymore.
Do you think it's fair to say that every one of us is offended? We are all offended. I get offended and I get angry. But it's how you deal with that and how you process through that that is important.
Absolutely.
Because I think that's a fair thing to say. We all get offended, but how do you process through it?
I think offended and confronted are two different things. I think offended is a choice. You can be confronted outside of your own control, out of your own choice, out of your own activity. But offense is then a reaction to that. And so I think I don't think being offended is a good thing, unless you're positively being offended because someone was racist or someone crossed a boundary they shouldn't, and then you make that choice. But I think everyday relationships, assuming people are not crossing those sort of boundaries, I don't think it's a good thing to be offended at all. I think when you're confronted with something, you have the choice to be offended, or you have the choice to try and resolve this issue.
I think there is a spur of the moment defense mechanism reaction, which you condition yourself to not do. I'm not sure if that's the definition of an offense or if you have to pick up an offense, but I definitely feel like my initial reaction can be, and I want to fight. And then, I mean, I'm talking split seconds, you can deal with that if you condition it in the right way. But I'm not sure if because your ego is being attacked directly, that you've done the wrong thing. It's like, what? I was trying to do the right thing. How can you attack my ego like that? So for me, it seems like an initial instant reaction. And then in dealing with that reaction, it maybe take a few seconds sometimes if you can condition yourself the right way. I'm not sure if I could ever get rid of the initial reaction, though.
I don't think anybody can. We all get offended. And the Bible even says iron sharpens iron. It's not nice. It's not comfortable. It's not pretty. Every one of us, I think, gets offended, but it's how we process through it, I think, is the important thing. So when he says, have the damn fight in the book, I think that's what he's saying is if this offends you, then say something, have the fight.
I think irritate would be a better word for his context.
Yeah.
If it irritates you, don't let it build to offense or resentment.
Do you think, though, as you increase in trust with someone, you'll get less offended? Because I know for me, I think sometimes I get offended because I don't trust that person's intentions, or I don't trust that they have my best in mind. I don't know. That's just for me.
I think it's a good point.
I feel more offended by the people I trust closer than by people I don't.
Me too.
Yeah, that's true.
Because that's my solid foundation. And if those people don't agree with what I'm doing, that's something's going terribly wrong.
But is that because you don't trust that they want your best, or
I
like
think
even if you really trusted them, maybe you should be like, well, what do you mean by that? You could be more objective about it, because you're like, they have my best in mind, so obviously they're seeing something I don't. Whereas it's this emotional reaction.
That's the state I work myself to. But
Yes.
my initial reaction there is complete and utter destruction, offense. Like, I can't believe this person sees me in this way. They should know better than anyone. So Yeah, I would say that's my initial reaction, and then those are the ones I have to work through. If some guy or some teacher or whatever thinks something, I don't really care
Yes.
because it doesn't shake my world. If I feel like I'm sitting on this foundation and then that just goes away from underneath me, that's devastating.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
How many of you wish you had be able to stop time for 10 seconds so that things would turn out very differently than those knee-jerk reactions that I guess we've all had, that we could just save that 10 seconds and implant it in there so we could change what happened? I feel like that all the time. I think about it an hour later and I think, oh, what an idiot. Why did you do that? Why did you say that? Why did you want to punch the guy there? What's the point? I think controlling that initial reaction, well, I find it quite hard, but over the years, I think I've got better at it. So I don't just lash out and say the stupid things or punch someone. I think I've got better at it, but it's still there. I surprise myself sometimes. There'll be someone in the street and they say something to me, I just want to punch them. And it takes everything for me not to punch them. I don't feel that with you guys. But there are some people I don't know, and they say something or they do something or they tell me you can't do that, and I just want to punch them. And I've learned. No, I'm quite violent. I am, but I've learned to give myself 5 seconds, and suddenly I think, what's the point to that? It's not going to help you.
Do you not think it's just because you got old and grumpy?
Yeah, but I've often wanted to punch people throughout my life, and I haven't done a lot of it.
I'm glad, because I'd probably be the one first in line.
Just playing psychoanalyst for a second.
Yes.
That's just a point of contact for other frustration to unload and unleash.
Good point.
Well, I do notice on some days I'm more tetchy than other days. I'll be whistling and happy and telling fantastic jokes one day, and then the next day it's like, why are you talking so loud to me?
But
Do you have a cycle, Dad? That sounds very female.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to depend on the moon. I don't know. It can be different from one day to the next.
But do you not think that, like, I'm trying to paraphrase some of the examples that Peterson used, but the boss is treating you badly, or there's too much pressure at work, and so you take that out on the wife, and the wife takes that out on the baby, and the baby bites the dog, is what he said. So there's a deflection and not taking up that responsibility. Do you not think that that's a sign of pressure in other areas, that then they have an opportunity to explode, possibly because it's a stranger and it's someone you don't have to deal with on a daily basis? And so
yeah,
like an escape.
I think that's one of the factors. That if Mum and I have had a fight and it's not been resolved yet, and I'm just peeved, if I'm tired, there's less buffer, or if I'm hungry, there's less buffer. So don't talk to me if I've had a fight with Mum and I'm tired and I haven't eaten yet. Just be careful.
He gets hangry.
I get hangry.
You could view that emotional response as a warning sign. Oh, I need to go sit down and work out what's going on, and then resolve it so that this doesn't keep happening.
Yeah.
Be well fed, resolve your issues.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right. And he makes the point, I think, near the end of the chapters, use your past effectively, I think is the phrase he uses. Use the past effectively. Don't repeat what you don't want. Repeat what you do want. It's deep stuff. But doing it is maybe harder. Yeah. And I'm pretty good. I'm normally able not to lash out, even if I want to. I give myself those few seconds to just rationally think it out and think, stop being an idiot. It's very seldom that I do go away an hour later thinking myself an idiot, but it does happen occasionally.
But being hangry is like brain damage. You got to deal with that.
Yeah.
The whole diet because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like I'm angry every day. It's not. It's an occasional thing. Well, maybe I'm angry every day, but I don't lash out every day. Because I don't like that feeling of guilt. I think that's one of the motives. That's why I don't go around punching people, because I just feel awful about it. I know that. The next moment I'd be devastated that I'd done it. So I managed to not do it,
You should be more like Seamus and I.
or just lash out.
No, we don't. We don't like the feeling of guilt. So we just don't feel guilty.
Just choose not to put it in the fog.
Yeah. No, we don't put it in the fog.
Is that where I get it from, Mom? Because I
Yes.
don't suffer with a lot of guilt.
Right. None of my family does. And you know why?
Why?
Because we deal with our crap.
I think the Irish have always been quite shameless.
Say Seamus.
Shameless.
You know what? We have our issues and we know what our issues are, and our family tells us what our issues are, and that's how we roll. So we're not sitting with fog. We live out in the open.
And it's a good punishment for those that like to manipulate, because they'll just ignore you. And that's not what a manipulator wants.
Or we'll call you on it.
And after you. Yeah, no, Seamus just ignores me.
Do I?
Yeah, if I don't come out and say something, you just ignore me and it drives me insane. Yeah, it was great. He just gets on with it and goes and plays a video game. And I sit and mull and like fester, and then eventually I have to go and talk to him about it.
I decided a long time ago that I wasn't going to be responsible for Esther's happiness. And that was one of the greatest things. It was a voice Meyer preach. And it was one of the greatest things for me, because I was always trying to solve her problems. And it's not my job to solve her problems. It's our job to fight and confront and negotiate and deal with things. But if she's going to sulk and complain and whinge, and she's going to try and get what she wants through those methods, she's not going to get it. And I'm just going to let her fester and not feed the dragon. So
You taught me that.
I did.
Yeah. I always used to feel that because I was the wife, it was my responsibility. And you taught me that it's not. We're responsible for our own happiness.
Yeah, I'm finding recently, because our boys are 7 and 5, and they have a lot of fights. You know, we're brothers. They have a lot of fights, and having to walk them through their emotions. Because when you're 5 and 7, and they've stolen your Lego, and you're certain they did it, and they both was throwing fists at each other, and you're trying to teach them how to use their words. It's really humbling, because you realize, you know what, I've got to learn some of these things I'm teaching them. Because I'll have a fight with Esther, and you know, my thing is I'll project my issues onto Esther. I'll say it's her fault, and it's sitting at the end of the bed thinking, you know, you want this, but you're not going to say it, or you know, you feel this, but you're not going to confront it this way. You're going to make it another issue because you want to punish him. Those kind of things, and having to teach kids these makes you go, oh, I could really deal with some of these lessons myself. It breaks it down, because you got to make it simple for kids.
Yeah.
You know, they say if you know something, if you can teach it. And as I'm looking at third person, looking at how they're fighting, you can really see that, you know, we started at a young age trying to develop the communication skills to express how we feel, and the fog's all part of that, because if you don't engage with that process, that's your backup plan. Fight or flight, and the flight is the fog. It's the avoidance. It's not seeing the dragon.
And you see people that do not teach their kids how to go through what they're feeling. They just punish them, or just ignore them, or tell them to go away. Or, I mean, you see it often. Or they just get punished but nothing is resolved or talked about. And it's because it's hard.
It's bad, and we don't talk about that.
Because it's hard to
stuff.
Or you don't know how to. You know, there's so many reasons why people don't teach their kids properly. And it just takes
It's
time.
because they're living in the fog. They don't want to confront, they don't want to face those things. Guys, do you remember me not letting you leave the room until we had talked through things? Do you guys remember that?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? What that did for you, what effect did it have on you?
It was emotional blackmail.
Honestly, I think we've made a few deals where we didn't actually deal with it. I hug your brother. I kill you. Mom, you're very good at making sure we resolved our conflict and got it all off our chest. And we're trying to emulate that with our boys. Trying, because it's hard. It's really hard to try and make sure there's none of that devious kind of manipulation, guilt stuff that is attached to conflict. It's a very healthy approach. I want to say something about the fog, because this last week we were talking about the dragon, right? And Jaden said, let's lose 10 kgs. And I went out the next day and I bought myself a weight scale. I've never needed a weight scale in my life. And for the last, I don't know how long, guys, maybe a year, my stomach's been growing and I've been getting a bit heavier. And in university, my friends would go, oh, what do you want to do when you're older? And I said, I want to be fat. Because I was so thin my whole life. I could eat anything and there was never any pounds on me. I would never deal with weight. And in the last year, I've just been getting fat. And when I finally got the weight scale and I put it down and I stood on it, I'm 10 kgs over like I thought I was.
Yeah.
And it's such a shocking thing. Shut up, Sean. Such a shocking thing, because when you finally face and you get into the thing that you've been avoiding, like you don't want to have the ideal, so you don't set the limit, you don't set the target, so you're not going to fail. And I've been lying to myself, it's fine, it'll go away. I've never dealt with weight problems in my life. And when you finally see it, it's actually a little bit freeing, because you can go, okay, here is the problem. This is the number of my problem. Now I've got to work at that. Whereas if it's just you don't look at it, it still niggles at the back of your head, whatever the issue is.
It feels like failure, but you can't define it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't want to look, but you know it's there. And now that I've looked at it, I go, okay, that's there. It's worse than I thought, but now I can't make any excuses. I've seen it now.
Defined it.
So yeah, I never get naked, so I never see that part.
Shower with your clothes on.
So Jaden, tell people what we're doing about that.
Did we announce it on the podcast or not?
You did.
We mentioned it. We circled around it, but we didn't define what it is. But we did.
Okay. So what we'll do is we're going to do a weight loss challenge between the three of us. And I've got some friends that might actually want to join in. And we're going to lose 10 kgs in 10 weeks, 1 kg a week. And that should end July 17th, July 19th, something like that. And I think we may post a few videos of our workouts and our diet plan and all of that stuff. But I don't know about Shay, because I'm not sure if he did the last one. Sean and I have done this before. And the challenge part is actually fun. You get really invested into it. The being fat and not addressing it is the part that sucks. The challenge and working towards a goal and achieving it is one of the best feelings you can have. It makes you more productive at work, more productive in your relationships, makes you learn more, all from a stupid challenge where you're just losing some fat, which isn't that big of a deal, But it has a great impact on everything.
I remember when I first heard Peterson talk about this maybe 3-4 years ago, and he in the particular lecture he was giving, he also related the fog to your house. And obviously one of his biggest rules is clean your room. And at that very time, and at our house at home, we have like a little corridor around the whole house. And I hadn't swept it for maybe a year. And we get snakes where we live, and I've killed snakes on our patio. So I know that there's snakes around that area. And the dragon always resides in the fog, in the unknown. It's lurking in the depths. And so with that in mind, I had avoided cleaning and sweeping the whole patio area, which we love to be out in. And now that Sammy's with us, we want to take him out there and play with them. And so at the time he was talking on the lecture, and I stopped the lecture as I was listening halfway through, because I knew I was avoiding that specific issue. And so I went out with a broom and with a spade. So if there were snakes, I could protect myself and kill anything that was there. And it took me hours because I was terrified that there was something lurking in the leaves, because you get piles of leaves. And there wasn't anything, but there could have been, and I would have had to deal with it as it arose. But because I cleaned the whole thing and I confronted that fear and I confronted that arena of life that I had left vague and had left in the leaves, it was such a freeing feeling and such a freeing moment that for the next, I think 3 months, 4 months, almost every day, I would be outside sweeping, because it was no longer a place of terror and a place of avoidance. It was now my front yard, my patio that I could use. And it became
Now your dominion.
Exactly right. And it became a pleasure now to be out there sweeping. And every time I swept, I wasn't sweeping away a year's worth of rubbish. I was sweeping away 1 day's worth of rubbish. But it felt the same. It was that same victory, because I got it to that same state again.
Wow.
Recently, even in the last couple of weeks, we've had a lot of, because it's springtime, we get like budding flowers on the trees. I've been out there again sweeping on a regular basis. I've got Sammy out there sweeping. He loves to sweep. And there's such a powerful place to be in, to be able to confront that stuff in the fog. It feels so much better than not confronting it, not doing the dirty work, but knowing it's there. It's a terrible, terrible feeling.
I remember watching Peterson's video talking about procrastinating, like the laying stuff. He kind of have the same concept, like you know that there is a problem that you should be solving, but you just delay it and delay it to a point that is too scary that you can't even look at that pile of paperwork or something. So then he said you got to break it down, kind of like tell yourself, okay, let's do this just a little bit, and then you build up to tackle that problem more and more.
Yeah.
Is that normal for people to procrastinate, like kind of stay in the fog for a little bit and then deal with it or not?
I heard who's the David Goggins. He's a fitness guy. He does crazy marathons and he's just always doing stuff. And I heard him do a little inspirational video the other day where he said he runs past a cemetery, and he says the saddest part about the cemetery is the unfulfilled potential. And he said most people are not fulfilling their potential. They're not trying something. They're not exhausting themselves. They care too much about their image and what people think, and they never access that. So I think that's an important thing in confronting it and not procrastinating, because procrastination is a technique to avoid stuff, right? It's not, and often when you avoid something and then you actually do it, you figure out it's not as bad as you thought.
Yeah.
So I think Peterson talks about the letter from the IRS, the government, to pay your tax, that you unopened because you're afraid that it could be a big bill and it's this big task. But the longer you leave that letter on the table unaddressed, unsorted out, the worse the problem becomes. And so you're better off just opening the envelope and confronting it head on and addressing it. And the result's so much better. I just filed my tax yesterday and it felt so good to just get it done. I don't have to do my tax now.
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah, as bad as it is, it's not as bad as if you leave it. Yeah.
Very good.
So if I could give some advice, some daily encouragement advice, what I do when I get under pressure is I list everything that's on my plate. I list it all, whether it's paying a bill or I've got to go and get a haircut, which clearly I do regularly, or any little thing, got to answer that text message. I write down everything that I can think of. Then I sort of put it in categories, so at least I can define what it is. Because if you just have a bunch of tasks jump up in your brain, there's always a feeling like I'm behind the 8 ball. I don't know how I'm going to get through this. So simply by defining it and listing exhaustively, already you get a feeling of conquering something, because now at least you know that what letters are on the table. And then everyone says, do the big thing first. Personally, if I'm feeling behind the 8 ball, I'll go and do the smallest thing first and get a little bit of momentum, get a few little runs on the board so that I can start to work towards the bigger things. And usually something that I've been avoiding for a week or two, I can do in 15 minutes. I can just hit 6 things and get stuff done. And I think those sort of techniques are not complicated. They're not particularly hard, but it is deep. It's deep within our psyche of just identifying what the playing field is and then sequencing through some simple things that I've personally found incredibly helpful.
What should be taught in school? I've been noticing that over the last few years teaching English. The one thing students lack the most is a plan. And they think, I've only got an hour to write this essay, and it's such a confusing topic. Let me get straight into the essay. Whereas when you stop them and go, let's spend 10 minutes, which is a large percentage of your time on a plan, their answers infinitely just get better straight away. So I would completely agree with you. And the plan starts with the intro, which is the easiest thing. Address what terms you're going to use, address what text you're going to talk about. So you build up this momentum. You've already written a whole paragraph and you're ready to get into the meat of it. Honestly, it's it's maybe getting rid of my job by telling people this, but if you write a plan for something, it's the most powerful thing. It's the easiest way to go up in a grade, and it's the easiest way to improve your life, I would say as well. It literally, you write lists every day, so do I. It takes about 5 minutes. It gives you a hierarchy of importance, which doesn't mean you start with the biggest. You could start with the smallest, build momentum. Yeah.
I find writing my list in the morning, I actually write a list at night so that I know I can sleep, because then I'm not worrying. So when I come into work in the morning, there's my list, I know, and I just add a few more things that I've thought of. That it brings me peace because it's not here anymore, it's there. And when you can look objectively at something that's not just swirling around in your head, you can then categorize and pattern out what's going to be. And you'll find that that's because sometimes we get tired. We just get tired and we don't have any momentum. But when you put it out here and you look at it objectively, that automatically gives you some momentum, I find. So I make a list before I go home from work, and I can come into it in the morning because it allows me to sleep. I leave it at work. I put it down here. So yeah, I think it's really helpful. You make lists now.
I make lists.
He never used to.
I used to.
When we were first married, you didn't.
I'm not when we first married.
Yeah.
My list was survive, kind of just, have lunch.
And Dad's learned to make lists, and I mean, he's incredible about the amount of work that he gets through now, but it's through list making. It's through
Order.
That's the word I'm trying to look for.
Yeah.
Ordering your thoughts.
Yeah, you don't sleep well in the fog, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's true. So we've understood what our fog is and how to deal with it. Next week, the chapter heading is Notice that Opportunity Lurks Where Responsibility Has Been Abdicated. I think that'll be fun. I think Sean will have lots of examples of that. Bye, guys. Thanks for watching.
Yeah.
Bye. So, Dad, are you going to intro all of us?
Do you want me to mention you by name? Okay.
No, don't do that. That would be incredibly boring.
That's what I thought. But when you say intro all of us, I thought
Yes.
I mean, just kick it off. So we'll do a cut, and then you're going to say, welcome back to Daily Encouragements.
Okay. What is this called? Whaley Podcast?
Yeah.
Okay.
Where am I? Whose show am I?
I just want to say the wrong things. We have to start again.
There's 37 people watching this podcast, Dad. You better.
Ooh.
Take it away, Dad. Anytime you feel comfortable.
Well, welcome back. I'm glad you're back.
Do it again.
What a dick.
No pressure. Can you make it a bit more relaxed this time?
Well,
Okay, keep it relaxed, but a little bit more energy.
okay, here we go.
And a sprinkle of sadness, just so people are intrigued.
Well, welcome back to week 3.